What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing the podcast. We are brought to you guys today by our advertisers. Our advertisers are Bell to Bell Fitness, Shea Tor, a realtor out in Arizona, former Bruin alum, and my main man Howard Chang, a realtor right here in Los Angeles. Let's go through them, guys. Bell to Bell Fitness is a boxing gym on the West Coast used by their FIT acronym, Fight Inspired Training. My main man, Tony Gonzalez, was the boxing coach for UCLA for over 10 years. He has built this gym on the West Side to learn how to boxing, stay in shape, and get you all the essentials you need to become somebody that is obsessed with boxing and fitness. Make sure to check it out. Go into Bell to Bell Fitness and say you heard about it from the Bruin Bible, and you're going to get a free session with Tony Gonzalez. So make sure to check that out. Shea Tor, my main man. Shea Tor is a licensed real estate agent in Arizona and a lifelong Bruin. He's a current Wooden Athletic Fund donor and football season ticket holder. When not selling houses or going to UCLA games, he loves to travel the country, checking out different arenas, ballparks, and stadiums. If you're looking to make the move to Arizona or know someone who is, please reach out to our loyal friend, Mr. Shea Tor. His phone number is 602-487-3975. Once again, his number is 602-487-3975. Make sure to check that out. And then the local realtor we got out here, Howard Chang. Howard Chang is a local realtor with the Serene team at eXp Realty. Their team has an office right here in Culver City, though they help clients buy and sell homes all over the LA County and the surrounding areas. Howard and his team do a ton of business and are super in tune with the market, knowing winning strategies to give their clients a competitive advantage. Have amazing vendor referrals, are a one-stop shop for anything real estate, and just provide a ton of value for their clients. Howard and his partner, Kyle Draper, are UCLA alums and a huge fans of the UCLA football and basketball programs. You will often see them at games, tailgating and networking, and staying involved with the UCLA alumni community. They would love to help any fellow alumni with accomplishing their real estate goals. So if you guys have any real estate needs in the LA area, look no further. Howard is your guy. All right, guys, we're going to go into the episode. What is up, and welcome to the latest edition of the Bruin Bible. You guys have been asking for him, man. It's about time we got him on. It's week 5 of the college football season, and we still have not gotten him on yet this year. Wayne Cook has graced us with his presence today. We are so grateful and excited to have him on the show. Wayne, how are we doing on this Wednesday? As we got another game this weekend on Saturday. We just came back from the Oregon game this weekend. How are we doing, buddy? It's great to see you.
I'm amazing, guys. Jamal and Will, I love this show. I always appreciate coming on. You all know that as Bruins, we're all a little torn right now because the season's in a little, it's kind of going the wrong direction. But we're all still Bruins, and we want to talk about ways that this team can figure it out. And I think if you're paying attention. I'll give you one quick example. If you listen to Kaika Malloy this week, you know these guys are still getting after it. I can tell you personally, and talking to some of the coaches at the game this weekend, there's no quitting these guys. So they're still fighting. They're still working as hard as they can. And let's be honest, this stretch of a schedule, going back, Illinois is now ranked 23, then LSU's ranked 13, Oregon 6, and now we're going to play Penn State 7. I don't know who else has a schedule like that out there, but this is brutal.
Yeah, man. And Indiana, to your point, man, they got a 33% chance of making the college football playoff as it stands right now. Kurt Cignetti is a hell of a coach. He may be getting that call to go down to Gainesville at year's end if Billy Napier and that thing blows up. But the place we want to start at, Wayne, is I want to start on the offensive side of the football for you. This team returned a lot of talent from last year, man. We were notably very high on Ethan Garbers. I know you were as well. He's struggled out of the gate, and I think a lot of the fan base has kind of come after him on, I see some of the negative tweets, some of the negative comments about Ethan Garbers. But what I would respond back to those critics and the naysayers of Ethan Garbers, how many quarterbacks can succeed right now with a dysfunctional offensive line? I don't think there's any way around it. It's been incredibly dysfunctional through the first 4 weeks of action. A run game, Wayne, that ranks statistically speaking. There's 133 Division I teams, 132nd in all of college football, and a complex new offense with Eric Bieniemy out there. And I think the two questions I have for you, Wayne, is one, what have you made of Ethan Garber's performance thus far, and how can he improve? And two, when you were a quarterback back at UCLA, when you had the Skip Hickses in the backfield for you and some of these guys, how did the run game make your job easier as a quarterback, leading the offense and leading them down the field?
That's a great question. I can answer both of these. I don't care if we're talking about Garbers. I don't care if we're talking about TJ Harden. I don't care if we're talking about Eric Bieniemy and his offense. I don't care if we're talking about the receivers. If you don't have an offensive line, and I'm going to tell you guys this, it's not just been struggling, it's been bad. And when you have players that, and I can explain this to everybody that's listening a million times. If I know as a quarterback, like if I'm going to count my guys that I've got to block, and I've got 5 guys to block year 4, and I still got a guy in my face when I'm trying to throw the ball, something's wrong. When my tackles are taking pass sets that are in my pocket, I've watched a ton of football. You can't back up 3 steps and be where the quarterback's standing when you engage. You can't do that. And it's happened over and over and over again. We had a play in last week's game where both of our tackles actually backed into our quarterback who was trying to stand in a pocket that he should have had. Because, see, remember, quarterbacks are supposed to trust these guys. We always say when the quarterback puts their head down and starts looking at guys, they're doing something wrong. When you know you have blocking, you're supposed to keep your eyes downfield because you're trying to read the defense. That's how you play the position. And so when you can't trust your guys, it's really hard to play quarterback. And I'm tell you, you asked me about my playing days. I had one of the best offensive lines in the history of UCLA football my junior year with guys like John Ogden and Von Parker and Mike Flanagan and Craig Nowitzki and Stevens. And these guys were amazing. We had fullbacks go for 100 yards in those games. To answer your question about running backs, we literally had a fullback rush for 100 yards. Like James Milner had a couple of games where he had over 100 yards. We had a whole bunch of different running backs: Skip Hicks, Ricky Davis, Sharmon Shaw. All those guys ran for a ton of yards. Okay, and then we still had J.J. Stokes and Kevin Jordan on the outside. So, like, we could do whatever we wanted because our offensive line was freaking amazing. Yeah. My next year, my senior year, we went into a tailspin because a bunch of guys got hurt. And when you don't have your offensive line, and then you have to plug in a freshman receiver and plays at J.J. Stokes, and you have to have a freshman, left tackle and right. All this stuff started happening, and the next thing you know, a quarterback that played in a Rose Bowl was getting booed in the Rose Bowl. What's wrong? Because that's how fans are. And trust me, you guys, I get it. You're mad at Garbers because Garbers is the one out there. I get that. That's part of our job. But I hope, as someone that can relate to this, I hope you guys understand it's really hard to play quarterback. It's like, why do you think so many top draft picks that go to the crappiest teams in the league end up looking horrible? Yeah. It's because those teams suck. And now you're trying to be a quarterback, and there's very few guys that are that good. So I think that answers the Bieniemy question too. And I'll tell you guys, I teased this a little bit off air. I wanted there to be a change at guard a little while back because I thought we were just way too slow and making too many mistakes, and they made that change. I think Prongus getting into the starting lineup, the LSU first half was the best offensive line play I'd seen all year.
Yeah.
There was one other position that I wanted to see change too, and I had an idea a while ago of maybe moving some people, and because I think Prongus ends up being a left tackle eventually. I think he's athletic enough, he's big enough, he can move, and I think we need that out there. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys I think we might shake up the offensive line again. We saw a little bit of it in the game, right? We saw Unije come out a few times. Sometimes it's injury, sometimes it's not. And we saw other people playing, like Jeffers, for example. So I think this is something I've been wanting to happen for about 3 weeks now, and I think we may see it. I can't tell you guys what it is, but I think we may see it, and I'm excited about it because I want more athleticism. We've been way too slow on the O-line, you guys. Like, our guys are just getting whooped. One-on-one blocks they're getting beat. Not all of them, but some of them more than others. And so when that happens, you got to look to make changes.
Wayne, to that point, I mean, such an excellent perspective there. What do you want to see change kind of more from a big picture standpoint going forward here? Obviously, you've sort of alluded to perhaps a little bit of shuffling in terms of the offensive line. But if you're Eric Bieniemy, what can you do from a schematic perspective to say, okay, this offensive line is either going to be what it's going to be or it's going to be kind of marginally better? I don't know if we can see kind of transformation in the next 8 weeks. So given that kind of reality, is it more 22 personnel of, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs? I mean, do we kind of go old school fullback? Do we bring Anthony Atkins in and play kind of a use check role? Do you bring Bryce Pierre with Matavao? And, do you chip a little bit more? and kind of maybe do a little bit more play action. How would you sort of approach it if you were Eric Bieniemy saying, hey, this offensive line is either going to be what it is or maybe 10% better, but I have kind of what I have. Now I got to work around it.
First of all, that's really smart thing to say. We're not going to see a enormous jump. I think the offensive line is what it is. I think it can be better. I think it's going to keep improving, but we're still going to have to work around it some. You can play more tight ends. You can, you could bring in a fullback, but I personally don't think we're going to see that. From what I've seen, from what's happening so far, I think Coach Bieniemy is going to call the offense he's going to call. More of the changes have been playing guys like Quasi Gilmer, who has shown that he's very athletic. Getting him involved, we see more Carter Shaw. I've said this, and I don't know the story behind it. I'm going to stop talking about it, but Logan Loya, for whatever reason, has fallen out of favor with his team. Yeah. And I haven't figured that out because when he played against LSU, he looked awesome. He looked like the guy that as a quarterback I would want to throw the ball to because he always finds space, but something's going on there. But either way, I'm not paid enough to know what's going on there. But I thought that TJ Harden showed signs of life last week. I think when there's no hole, you get in the habit of always trying to bounce everything. And that to me is high school running back stuff. You can't do that in this league. Guys are too athletic. And so you've got to find a way to find even if it's the smallest little crack in the world and get positive yardage. Any kind of positive running game will help everything out. I truly think that we could also get Matt Stevens talks about it during our broadcast all the time. And we saw a little bit of this at times. Do the shorter stuff. Get the ball out quick. Everybody does it. These long, slow, over-the-top routes that take forever to develop, we don't have time to throw them. And we're getting our quarterback killed. So get the ball out. Garbers has a nice release. He gets the ball out quick. He can be accurate when there's nobody in his face. So throw some, screens, quick stuff to the outside of the receivers. Don't be afraid to throw a hitch or an out. Garbers throws a great out. Those don't take very long. You hit the plant foot and they're gone. So I think quicker passing games and then just we had several games where other than Garbers, you guys, we were running the ball like 14 times.
Yeah. You
cannot be successful doing that. We don't pass block well enough to let the other team know these guys are going to throw the ball all the time. Because especially like we're going to play Penn State. I don't know if you guys have paid any attention to their defense.
Yeah.
They got some dudes, right? And so we're going to have to block some probably, I would argue this is the best defense we faced yet, right? This is 100%. And they've got athletes. I don't even want to say their names because there's so many of them. They're just good everywhere. So we're going to have to figure out a way to still stick with the run game, even if it's only getting 3 yards. I mean, sometimes you have to do that because it helps you set up other stuff.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on your point, they ranked second in total defense last year, fourth this year. They were kind of the inverse of those Chip Kelly teams where for Chip Kelly, the offenses were always so prevalent. It's like, man, if you could just get a top 50, 60 defense in there, top 60 offense last year. They're now ninth in the entire country when it comes to total offense right now with Andy Kotelnicki coming over from Kansas and what he was able to mentor with a guy like Jalen Daniels. I want to move to the defensive side of the football. And Kaika Malloy made some waves within the UCLA fan base today with, his teared up response, at the press conference. I came away very impressed with the man that he is and how much he cares about getting this right for UCLA football. It's been far from perfect at times, but the stats remain the same. We only allowed 6 points to a really talented Oregon team in that second half last week. We haven't had a sack in 3 games. I think that's problematic. When the first game, we were bringing a lot of guys for extra pressure. I know this is going to trigger some UCLA fans. It brought back a lot of Jerry Azzinaro time period where you brought 6 or 7 guys to kind of come and bring this blitz. Edge pressure has been a problem. Outside of that, I think this defense can be very correctable if everything kind of goes right from a pressure standpoint. Give me your interpretation, Wayne, of the press conference from Malloy earlier today and what this defense can do to maybe get on the right track moving forward to Penn State.
I'm a huge Kaika Malloy fan. Like as a human being, he's exactly what you see. He loves his guys. He's ultra emotional. He cares so much, and he's been a really good football coach too. Yeah. This defense has not been the problem. I think we've pointed it. Yeah, I get it. And he even said it in the press conference. We don't have the guys we had last year off the edge. We just don't. I mean, UCLA hasn't had that kind of talent off the edge in a long time. It wasn't like that was. It was like we just had all these transfers came in and they ended up working, right? And then you still had Carl Jones and some of these other guys that were already here. This year we're moving linebackers to the outside. You're seeing Femi, now basically playing there, and because our inside backers, we have a lot more depth, and you're even seeing Kane come off the edge, right? Yeah. So we're trying to do whatever we can. He also said in that press conference that we're going to start seeing a little bit more of Sharif Say, okay, a guy that was brought in to be a pass rusher, and so they're going to have to throw guys in there, even if maybe they're not up to speed on what they're doing. He said we're going to throw them into the fire and see what we can do. But at the same time, he's aware that he has to manufacture a pass rush, and it's been hard. And here's what's refreshing. He owned it. He's like, it's my fault. I got to come up with better ways to pressure the other team's quarterback. Now, if I had to rank the quarterbacks that we've played from Rourke all the way through Dylan Gabriel, I actually would put Drew Aller at number 4 of the last 3 quarterbacks we faced. I actually think Drew Aller is solid. I don't think he's spectacular. I think he's solid. I think he's on a team that runs the football the way they do and plays defense the way they do. He's just, I think he's good. I'm not saying he's bad at all. I think he's very good, but he doesn't scare me like some of the other guys do. But you still just can't let him sit there and do whatever he wants. So we're going to have to put some pressure on. But you guys, I don't know about you. I think the secondary's been solid. He mentioned it in the press conference. He said, yeah, sometimes when we bring it, we've got to play tighter coverage so they can't hit that 5-yard out. I get that. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't think they've been the problem. The pass rush has been a problem. I have to admit that. These quarterbacks are way too good to never touch. But at the same time, the run defense has been good. He talked about Jay Tawia getting double teamed all the time. We've got to figure out a way to make them pay for that. If you're going to double team that guy all the time, you have to be able to get home somewhere else. Yeah. And Jay Tawia is one of and you guys look at the stats, our rush defense is solid, and it's going to have to be this weekend because that 2-headed monster coming at us from Penn State is really, really good. But we've been stout in the middle, even after losing Williams. But the pass rush is it. It is. It's like the blocking on one side and the pass rush on the other side have been our main problems. I think we have talent everywhere else. Ramon Henderson's been really good. KJ Wallace has been really good. We saw Addison in that big return. He's been really good. Like when I watch them play along with Jalen Davies and Kirkwood, I'm like, these guys are good. We just need DBs can't cover forever. So if you have no pass rush, it trickles down to every other position. It's even tight ends when they're trying to cover someone, when our linebackers are trying to cover guys, you can't cover forever. So we have to find a way to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, Wayne, it's such a great point, and it sort of segues into kind of 2-part question for you. One is, how would you go about manufacturing a pass rush? I know you mentioned, does Malloy need to do kind of some more platoon? Will and I have sort of talked a lot about if you can't beat them with quality, can you beat them with quantity and just stay fresher for a longer period of time? I think the Where's Waldo gentleman of 2024 UCLA football is Collins Achempong. We were so excited about him just as a physical specimen in the spring and the fall, and the fact that he hasn't really emerged yet. Is there anything that you're seeing there, kind of question 1, to kind of get him more on the field? And then question 2, Wayne, moving forward, let's assume, this week is a loss and we're at 1-4. I think it becomes really critical moving forward in that Minnesota game to try and get us on a run, because I think bowl eligibility for Deshaun year 1 would be just so critical and vital for him to be able to grow in terms of those additional practices, that additional platform, and really start getting things from a momentum perspective. So one is, how do you see kind of generating a pass rush? And then 2, how do you feel about, after this stretch, this team's ability to kind of make a run and threaten bowl eligibility? So
your first question, I had forgotten about the transfer from Miami because we haven't seen him at all. Yeah. And then Tuazama is another good-looking body that we haven't seen much. And I don't have the answers to that because, I mean, if you're in practice every day and you're not showing enough there to get on the field, then you're not. And again, I don't really have an answer other than at times, if we trust our DBs, and sometimes I think you take the risk of giving up big plays, but do you bring corners? Do you bring safeties? Do you do some other things to at least make the quarterback think? And I think you probably have to. I think you bring that corner blitz and you play man on it and hope your guys can cover one-on-one for when they run their side adjust, but maybe you get home. And then they have to start thinking about stuff like that. So there are ways to manufacture pass rush, trying other people. I've said this forever. Practice sometimes. There's always the player, and I don't care who, any of the people we just mentioned, that when you put them on the field, they're different. I've been around guys like that for a long time. Just for whatever reason, they get on the field. It's like, wow, we don't see this in practice. What happened to this person? And they're just gamers. So, it's just been, to you guys, watching this pass rush has been so frustrating because I literally see all of our guys standing up with no leverage, and they're just getting manhandled. And the quarterback's literally, go back all the way to the Indiana game, right? The quarterback's just standing back there like going, who am I going to throw to? And they almost hit every third down they tried. It was just like, it was like we were good, and then 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, every freaking time, and we couldn't get home. And then as a coach, you're going, do we drop back in coverage? Do we bring people? It's always that mix. And believe it or not, what's been really sad is no matter what they do, they've been wrong. Because when we bring people, we're still not getting home.
Right.
And when we drop back in coverage, we can't get home with the 3 or 4 we're rushing, and then there's just too much time. So I don't have the answers. I'd be making, million or two a year if I had those answers. But I think maybe bringing some safeties and corners at times, but you have to be smart when you do that. You really have to be smart when you do that because you could be exposed. So that's important. I forget, Jamal, the second part of that question.
Just how you feel about the possibility of a run. Let's assume this is 1-4, and now we start kind of getting out of the murderer's row. And Wayne, to your point, 4 straight ranked opponents.
Right.
I don't think there's a team in the country, maybe Florida at the end of the year in the SEC. Outside of that, this is the hardest 4-game stretch of anybody in the country. And so can you, hopefully they sort of still stay together sort of emotionally and mentally and locked in. And I think that's what we're seeing from the Malloy press conference. But what do you think is kind of the likelihood of a run moving forward there? We got some winnable games that we, Minnesota, Iowa, Fresno State. There's some games there that we could maybe go on a run. How do you think about the back end now?
So first of all, thank you for reminding me. I'm getting older. I love that question because I had the same thought. I even wrote it down. I'm like, how do we get 6? How do we get 6? And after this week, even though the odds makers are probably going to make us underdogs in a lot of these, which by the way is dumb to say that for the rest of the year because things might change, right? Maybe we have a couple of good games now. People are like, okay, maybe they're not that bad. Maybe those other teams are playoff teams. We might have just played 3, playoff teams in a row. We might, and we might be going into 4. That's nuts. And so 2 top 10 teams in a row if you count Oregon. So to me, it was and I asked Deshaun Foster about this on Bruin Insider this week. I asked about the attrition because, I always have told people if you play in a Power 5 conference, you play 9 conference games. And you have that part of your schedule where it's usually only 2. Maybe, you have a rough stretch, but it's not this. I can't even remember a time when we've had a stretch like this, to be honest with you, especially since we thought it was going to be 3. But now we know what Signetti's done with Indiana and how good they are. I'm telling you guys, that Surratt, that receiver, is freaking good. That guy, I watched him before that game, and I went, this guy's amazing. He's one of the best receivers in the country. And then I watched work, and I went, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. And then I'm watching the way they're just really good and they're really well coached. So they're going to keep winning. They're going to keep winning. They're a good team. But anyway, it's getting through that healthy.
Yeah.
And getting through that, and when I say healthy, it's a complicated word, right? Because we can have mental health too. So the physicality of it, we already have lost some people. We know Garber's, we don't know what's going to happen. We might see Justin Martin this week. I even threw out into the atmosphere that, do we think about Nick Billups, who's a little bit more mobile? Because remember, Justin Martin's going to be a thrower first. It's he's a tall, he can move, but Billups is a little bit more squirrely when he runs, and he can throw too. I just don't know how well he knows the offense. I don't know. I just always think about these things because when you're not blocking well, you go Michigan, right? You're like, okay, we're just going to play orgy and we're going to run the crap out of the ball. Problem is we're not running the ball well either. So I know that's probably not a solution, and we hope Garber's plays, but you got to think about this stuff when you're trying to get out of a slump. But I want us to be healthy because then when you get in, and we can name all of them, even Iowa. Iowa's not as good as they've been, especially defensively. They're still really good, but they're not quite what I think they've been on that side of the football. They are scoring more though. So that Friday night game's probably of the stretch we have left, and I'm going to ignore SC. I would say Iowa's it. Washington's not quite what they were. That's another Friday night game, by the way. We got 2 of those up in Seattle. But, gosh, they're playing defense. Have you paid attention? They're not bad. So Washington's not bad. Minnesota, they fought back. That last week's score was misleading, right? They got some points late. Minnesota,
That's
like
good though.
I'm just telling you, they're all good. Fresno State's just got whooped. Okay, so we'll see what they are. But like my point is that there's a bunch of solid teams left. But if we figure out, like, remember the first half against LSU, which was fun, right? It's the most fun I've had this year. And the second half, that third quarter, especially against Oregon, I actually thought was pretty good football, especially defensively. We're just making too many stupid penalties and bad snaps, and all this stuff that could go wrong seems to go wrong. But we have moments where we've shown that if we can just put this together, we can compete. And like you said, a little bit lower level of competition. And the mental part of it is, let's say you get a win against Minnesota and you actually play your most complete game and you have your least amount of penalties. Shoot, we have special teams this year. That's exciting. Punting's been great. Field goal kicking's been great. Let's get in a game where we need those things, right? Where we need those things. So, like, the idea is that if we get and we clean that stuff up, I agree with you. I'm not throwing away this weekend. Anything can happen in college football. But there are wins out there if this team keeps fighting and mentally they actually believe they can do it, because I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely, man. And, just to kind of piggyback off that last kind of questions, we as a team, I think the fan base had some expectations. They haven't been met. It's been a little disappointing for the fan base, but there have been some bright spots on the team. We notably have talked about Quasi Gilmer looking like ahead of schedule right now. He made those 2 third-down catches on the first drive last week against Oregon. They were going, this guy's a dude doing this against Oregon defensive backs, a Dan Lanning defense this early in his career. He's got a bright future ahead of him. Every time I see my guy, Maliki Matavao, it's just a dude out there, Wayne. Like, he's going to make a catch. He's going to move the sticks. I go back to that 1st and 15 at Hawaii where it's the final drive. We got to get the game-winning, field goal into the leg of Bagani. It's 1st and 15. We had the false start on the road, and Matavao may have made the biggest catch of the season for us as we immediately bounced back with a 20-yard gain over the middle. There's bright spots here. Rico Flores being another one of those guys. Who are some of the players that have stood out to you that you're impressed with? I know you just doted on the special teams. And what players need to step up if we are able to reach bowl eligibility by the end of the year, Wayne?
This would remind me of a different era with if I started with Richter and Bagnani and I said no, we're not going to do that. Although Richter has been good. But I will go down this list. First of all, I liked Quasi the first time I saw him in practice.
Yeah.
This guy's an athlete. You can just see the way he moves and the way he runs. And you can see it. He's also a guy that wants the ball. The problem with, and it goes back to the offensive line play again, is that, Matavao, who I also love as a player, should be getting more. He should be getting more. Quasi should be getting more. Pay attention to Carter Shaw.
Yeah,
I'm telling you guys, he's getting on the field because he's rangy. He's that long arm, tall body, but man, he can move. He can literally, and once he kind of grows into his, he was skinnier last year. He's put on some weight. I think he's got promise. I like those 2 young guys getting thrust into action because I believe in competition. And I know when you have a young guy, I don't care if you're J-Mike, I don't care if you're any of these players that are I've always been out there, you've got to keep fighting for your job. You got to keep fighting for playing time because these young guys are going to want to come in and play. And they're getting more and more action. And I think that's awesome. So, but still, because of, us not being able to do things with regularity, like with our struggles with penalties and offensive line play and sacks and all the stuff that's been going on, it's been hard to get anybody into a rhythm. I'd like to see a receiver I'll go back to the LSU game. I thought Logan Loya having the 4 catches and a touchdown. I was like, that was one of the best stat lines I'd seen. And so I would like to see more of that going forward. I'll point out on the defense, I'm absolutely enamored every time I watch Jay Toia play. I think he's incredible. I think he occupies a lot. Our rush defense has been good because that dude's in the middle, and he doesn't you don't notice it because he's not getting to the quarterback a lot, but that sucker pushes that line back, and he causes problems. this is what's so frustrating because the outside rushers need to benefit from him, and they're not. You guys take advantage. You get one-on-one on the outside, you got to win. So like that's been a problem. Cam Medrano, I had a chance to say something, and I wish I would have worded it better before the last game because it probably sounded negative. But I'm like, dude, you just keep doing you. Like you just keep doing what you're doing. People will notice, and it's like when you're on a team that's struggling and not winning. I swear to you, I've told every high school kid because whenever they're not winning now, they want to transfer to a winning team. I said, how about you ball out on your losing team and show what kind of character you have. If a scout's worth anything, they will find you on a losing team playing as hard as you can. And Kane, man, he gives it everything he's got. I think Femi's been fantastic this year. We mentioned the DBs earlier. I've been impressed with Ramon Henderson and KJ Wallace as transfers. I really like Brian Addison, and I love and again I think Kirkwood has had a good year. He's been healthy. I think he was hurt a lot last year, so like I feel like he's been healthy. Davies, I thought he struggled a little earlier in the season, but I think he's bounced back too. So like, and again, those guys are being put in a horrible position because we're not hitting the other team's quarterback. You look at our quarterback, Garbers is covered in, whatever the field is, and he's just like looks like he's been beaten. And the other quarterback is like, hasn't been touched. He can probably hang his jersey up and wear it again the next game without washing it. So, like, we got to hit those guys a little bit. So there have been some players. I was happy to see TJ kind of show a little spark last week. Looked like he was a little bit quicker and running with some enthusiasm. But no, those guys that I mentioned, the first ones, especially on the defensive side, I think those guys have looked really, really good.
No, it's great insight there, Wayne. I'll ask you kind of maybe the inverse of that question a little bit, along with kind of a part B as well. I've been a little bit puzzled to sort of your earlier point on who's kind of getting on the field and who's not, right? And, we talked about Loya. I mean, the fact that Sturdivant, isn't even getting targeted in some games, is sort of puzzling to me. I think we made such a big emphasis on getting Keegan Jones back from UConn, and it feels like his usage rate is still really low. I think we made such a big emphasis on getting Berger from Michigan State, downhill runner, especially when you're kind of struggling from an offensive line standpoint, and you need to kind of break that first tackle. Why isn't Berger kind of getting on the field? And so what are you maybe seeing, kind of question one, on what is sort of the criteria, being very close to the team, that you're seeing of how guys are kind of getting on the field versus guys that are not? Is it something that the enemy's looking for from kind of a weapon perspective, or is it something in terms of how they're practicing? Because I'm still trying to crack that Da Vinci code of who's kind of getting on the field and who's not, because it's a little kind of perplexing to me moving forward. And then part B, kind of a provocative question. Would you sit Garbers this week? And almost say, look, we're going to be 1-4, but I need a healthy Garbers if I'm going to try and go to 6 wins, versus getting them out there at 75, 80% and then risking further injury. And then I think to the earlier point, we saw all these guys in the fall and the spring. I think there's a big drop off at this particular stage between Garbers and our next set of quarterbacks. So, is it maybe, hey, we give Jamar a start in Happy Valley and give him, some experience going into next year's quarterback competition, and we heal up Garbers to really try and make that run? How do you maybe think about that?
So those are great questions. And the first one, I'm going to keep saying the same thing over and over again. I think that they're better in practice, and we see, I think we've even heard, if you've paid attention to what Coach Foster talks about, he's talked about it. He goes, we're doing these things right in practice, and we're getting under the lights or out there on the stadium, and we're just not executing. So I think the players that are playing are the players that are doing well in practice. The Da Vinci Code comment, that was clever, because I trust me, I've been standing on the sidelines wondering the same thing sometimes. I'm like, wait, what's going on? But the problem is all these plays that are drawn up to be excellent don't work if your guys up front don't do their job. And so, like, I don't care which running back it is, whether any of them. Keegan's had moments, right? They've all had moments. I mean, we've even talked about Frias getting a chance. See who can do it, but when the hole's not there, it's just frustrating. I mean, I've watched 2 particular offensive linemen be so off this year. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, getting out of their stance late, like going the wrong way, 2 people blocking someone where someone's running right up the A gap. And I'm like, man, that's a mental toughness problem. And when you have players that can't stay mentally tough in football, you're in trouble. And that's why I'll go back to the beginning of this. I think we might see even more changes. And I think the coaches are trying to find that perfect 5. And part of this goes back, remember, part of this goes back to the previous, what was this staff? What did this staff inherit? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying they don't have a ton of good players, because we do. We have a ton of good players. But it feels like that position was probably a little thin, right? The O-line was probably not where we needed to be recruiting over the last few years to have some depth and to have more competition and talent. And then sometimes you bring in transfers, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But when I'm watching the film and I'm seeing guys getting whooped, like, and not just whooped, but like missing entirely, and it's like a lot. And then you start looking back at, like, how often are we actually on the field? I mean, coaches have talked about this a lot. We're not on the field enough. The defense is on the field a ton. We're not on the field enough to really get anything going. And then when we do block, there's a holding. And again, some of the same players that I'm referring to will get a hold and then another hold. And it's like, you can't play if you can't block and you're holding also. It's really hard to keep you on the field. So, again, I swear, I love UCLA. I love all these players. I root for every one of them to, like, trust me. I always tell the story about how after we played Nebraska, my junior year, our Rose Bowl year, and Coach Smith flat out told the whole team that the quarterback play wasn't good enough. And I say that for a reason, because I wasn't being babied. I wasn't being coddled. I didn't go up to, hey, man, I'm transferring. I said, screw you. I'll show you. And I had 11 touchdown passes in the next 3 games. I went 3, 4, and 4, which at the time was a record for UCLA. So I responded. So if you're going to get called out, frickin' respond. Don't go talking to your parents or start thinking about transfer. Play better. And I think that's the whole idea about being a competitor, is that, and trust me, guys, I had gone through much worse than losing to Nebraska by 1 point, which, by the way, that team played in for the national championship that year. I had gone through losing streaks at UCLA, and it hurts. And trust me, I've been booed at the Rose Bowl. I know how it all feels. But as athletes, we're taught from when we're little kids, you can't let that stuff get to you. You have to be mentally tough. You have to be. And you have to keep fighting, and you have to keep battling. And when you do that, things typically will turn around. But you can't feel sorry for yourself. You can't stand on the side by yourself. You got to be that great teammate. I know I'm rambling right now, and you guys know that I do this. But I just think it's so important. And from what I'm hearing from the coaches, the players are fighting. They're still fighting, and they're still together, and they're still a team. So all this stuff I'm talking about, it sounds like they have that mental toughness. And it sounds like, and this is not coming from a guy that won every game he played in. I did not even close. My high school teams were actually really bad. You just keep fighting. You just keep showing up every day and giving it the best you can, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
No, really well said, Wayne. No, and hopefully we get you in the locker room here, but pregame. I mean, I'm ready to run through a wall here, Wayne. I mean, come on. And then, Wayne, I'll hand it back over to Will, of course. But thoughts on Garbers? Start. What do you think maybe is the best thing to do strategically?
I think if he's ready to go, you go with your starter. I don't like sitting a guy to protect him, because that's almost like waving the white flag, right? So you don't want to do that. If he's hurt, though, and this pass rush being what it is, I mean, I admire Ethan so much, because trust me, as a quarterback that's gone through struggles, to get blamed for stuff that, when he's, limping into the locker room at the end of the game is probably as sore as you can imagine after every one of these games from all the hits he's taken. And to be honest with you, he's been asked to run a lot too. And, I feel for him. I don't think we're really seeing what he could be if we had, more time for him to throw the ball. So I feel bad for him. But I will say this, though. If he is not capable of being able to be mobile in this game, again, you guys have seen Penn State play, correct?
Yes.
that number 11, it's always number 11, right? That number 11 going all the way back to like LeVar Arrington, right?
Exactly.
Going all the way back. I mean, that number 11 is coming. And it's Carter, right? So he is really good, but he's not the only one. I mean, I watched the Illinois game, and they actually stymied him a little bit. But they got other people coming from every direction, and they don't have their names on the back of the jersey. They're just a bunch of black uniforms coming right at you. And if you can't move a little bit, because that's a strength, in my opinion, it's one of the things Garbers does well. He can throw it, but he can also move around a little bit and be effective with his legs. If he's really limited, then I think about it. Then I go, hey, although can you imagine the hotel room, J-Mart sitting there? I know what it feels like when I was a starter for a while, and you're sitting there before, like you're going to play at Nebraska, and you're sitting in the hotel the night before the game going, okay, it's the best team in the country. We're at Nebraska. Like, you're pumped, but at the same time, you're not sleeping real well. I hope for Justin Martin, if it is his time, man, I swear to you, the nerves are real. They're also awesome. Embrace them. Embrace their nerves. When you come into that game, I don't care how many butterflies you have, that first hit you take, it all goes away, and then you just play your football game, and you do your best. And that's all you can do, and what a cool opportunity. I'm hopeful Garbers is fine because I think we need him. But if it's Justin Martin or anybody else, just give it what you got. I mean, this is what you grow up dreaming about, right? You've seen I'm watching Penn State, Illinois, and I'm watching that whiteout crowd. And I'm just going, how cool would it be to play there? I mean, it would be so much fun. These guys get a chance to do that. They get to be in this environment in one of the best stadiums in America, so embrace it.
Yeah, man. Pressure is a privilege, as I like to say, when it comes to having these opportunities, man. Last question we'll leave you with, man. You've been so awesome. You've given us 40 minutes of your time, as we can see right now. If UCLA is to have a shot in this game, what do they need to do to give themselves a position to be in this ball game, and maybe, if lightning strikes in Happy Valley, have a shot to win this ball game?
Well, I mean, I would hope that Garbs is okay, because I do think, his experience, and I agree with you. One of you guys said it earlier. There has been a gap. I'm not saying that, but again, I also pointed out that you never know what you're going to see until some of these guys get out there. And it can't just be like a series late in a game. It's got to be like real game time. And then you might find out, oh my gosh, this guy's way better than we thought they were. Some guys are like that. So hopefully if that happens, that happens. If there is more changes to happen on the O-line, because I swear to you, just the Prongas change really mattered. Like, it really mattered. Like, that change, putting him in at guard, changed that LSU first half. It was way better. Like, and then this change that we might see or might not see, the next wave that might come may help even more. I don't know. I really don't know. We'll have to wait and see. That'll be huge. On the other side of the ball, when you look at the two running backs, 10 and 13, Singleton and Allen. Yep. I mean, this is a run. This is a run game. They're going to want to run the football. And if you remember the second half of the LSU game, remember, we were pretty good, but then they started pushing us around a little bit. We got tired, and that run game kind of took over. This is a much better running team than that. From what I've seen, I feel like Penn State's probably better than LSU. I think that they always have linemen that can block. I just watched a thing on Singleton bench pressing, kind of like not bench pressing, but squatting like Saquon. He can't do quite as much as Saquon, but he did, like, they gave this stupid number, and he did, and then like, oh, and by the way, he did it 5 times. I'm like, ooh. So there's going to be some grown men running the football in this game. So Jay Tawia and the linebackers are going to have to, Cam Medrano and company are going to have to really do a good job up the middle, because if they can run the ball, and then that's when Drew Aller's in his element, and he can do play action and stand back there and throw. I would say pass rush, but I think it's more important to be a run-stopping team in this one. So be good against the run, and then, find a way to block and give our offense a chance to do something. If we can move the ball, I'm telling you, it's infectious. If they can do some things on offense, and we saw it in how exciting was the LSU game, because the offense got 17 points and a half. That's the most we've scored all year, you guys. That had everybody pumped. You can feel it on the sidelines. The crowd was into it. The defense was into it. It helps the whole team when that happens. So I think that's going to have to happen too.
Awesome. Well, Wayne, dude, thank you so much for coming on, as always. It's always great to get insight. As we like to say, man, you're our only guest right now. We're going to make that, moving forward, man. So thank you so much for coming on, man. Always a pleasure to hear you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. We had an absolute blast with this. We're going to do more lives throughout the season. Stay tuned. We might even be able to get Wayne to join us for a couple more guys. So stay tuned for those. You guys, if you guys are traveling to Happy Valley this weekend, tell us how the atmosphere is. Wayne, are you going out to Happy Valley this weekend?
Absolutely, man. I'm on a
love it.
dude. The trip, like I haven't not been on the sidelines at a UCLA football game in over 20 years, guys. So the trip is weird. It's all the travel and the driving and it's pretty crazy, but I can't wait. I cannot wait.
It's going to be an absolute blast. Well, Bruins, 4's up. We will be talking to you very soon. Stay tuned for a live after Penn State, guys. We will be in